and whether they were going to get into the mobile marketplace or play in the phone space. They may have wanted being too late. Those decisions were probably steeped in Microsoft's culture, and therefore they used their habits, and maybe they just reacted. It might be making the right decisions, but just way too slow. So that could be one of the habits that gets in there. So what the back of the thing, the joking thing is you could be making a lot of evil decisions because they're steeped in a certain set of habits based on a certain culture. Another thing to think about is there's this idea of organizational will, and Steve Paha actually talked about intentions. I like to use the word will, and you have intentions and what the organization is saying, and then you have actions and what they're doing. And so if actions don't agree with intentions, they're negative, and the organizational will winds up being zero, right? If it's like, I got 5 intentions that say we're going to do it this way, and all my actions go the other way, I'm going against the grain. And another thing he said is that, our performance of our organization is equal to the sum of how well we keep the quality of our agreements. So if I take a look at that, I want goodwill, so I want to have these things match, which will help lead toward good performance. So just something to think about on the cultural sense. So what do I need to do? We're going to revisit this a little bit later, but I need to make changes, small decisions, try to make small decisions consciously to change habits, organizational habits, as one of the ways of changing my culture. All right, so that's one of the areas that I need to constantly address when I'm pushing against that cultural membrane. It's not the only one, but one of them. So here's the approach we're going to take. We're going to set an aspirational target, and I'll talk a little bit of why we want to make it aspirational and what that means in a second. We're going to examine possible routes that we want to take to that. And then we're going to select what we think is the best route and first set one or two waypoints along the way that are moving us that way. And we want to consider, we don't want to be, so we want to have passionate ideas on how we're going here, but we want to loosely hold those because they may not be right. Okay, we need to be willing to accept that these are experiments and that we may have a failure that tells us a better route that we should have taken. All right? We want to work out the details and make decisions that are operational in nature, inspect and adapt at each waypoint, make course corrections based on that inspection, and then we want to enlist the aid of our squadron mates. We don't want to go against the cultural enemy by ourselves. We'd like to have squadron mates flying with us and covering our 6. So let's talk about what an aspirational vision is. So look at a couple definitions. An aspiration is a strong desire or ambition, or it's a goal or objective. All right, it's a little different than an end state. You hear a lot of people talk about, what's our end state? Where do we want to be once we finish this transformation? And the reason you don't want to do an end state is it's a set of required conditions, right? That sounds really nice, except these required conditions are technically everything has a hard measure. If I've got something that's going to take me a while to get done, how do I know what my hard measure is going to be? So the problem with that is that I'm making basically a big upfront design decision. Here's what my measures I'm going for. I'm going to design this thing to be this way. I'm making a lot of big upfront design decisions on my org change, right? As opposed to doing something in an agile manner. My org change should also be done in an agile manner. So by not doing that, not defining a total end state, like I want to be safe as an example, I want to run everything in a safe manner, meaning the scaled agile framework, or some other framework if you prefer, or defining X% reduction in time. I'm going to, way up front, I'm going to assist in a mind change. I'm going to recognize the fact that I actually have to progress toward it regularly. I do want to make some concrete decisions that I'm going to measure, but I've got an aspirational goal, and that may even change a little bit. So I have to understand that my target may be moving, and so therefore, if I try to say this is going to be my static target up front, and it's moved a bit due to market conditions or whatnot, I may not be hitting my target, and so I want to just make sure I'm moving toward my target. I also want to consider that each leg that I'm taking is, like I said before, an experiment. And also, by doing this, if I hold an aspiration, if we remember, go back to Steve Jobs for a second when he said the iPhone, I want a phone that only has one button. He didn't say what the button had to do. He just said, I wanted one button. There's an aspirational. It's actually turning our organizational change into product thinking. and thinking about it long term as opposed to a short term thinking, which would be a project, right? I'm going to do this project, get to this end state, I'm done. I hit my conditions, I'm done, disband the team. Now, the reality is we're never done. It's a journey again. So the other thing is if I do define these hard measures in my end state, what am I going to focus on? I'm going to focus on how I adopt practices or improve process. Everything's going to be about hard measurement, of which I want to do that in these smaller concrete states that I'm shooting for, but I don't want to do that for my target end state. Again, that's more of a big upfront design. Because if I do that with having an aspiration, I can more easily balance the soft skills I might need compared to the hard measurements and hard skills I may need to introduce. All right, so that's essentially why we want to choose an aspirational. And organizational transformation, as, you know, as when we think about aspirations, what do we need? Well, we need a not too complex vision, right? So our aspirations should be not too complex vision, and I want a set of characteristics based on this vision. I'm going to have an example here in just a minute. Again, setting it means I want to, you know, personalize it. I want to make my Agile transformation mean something. It's great to say we want to adopt everything in the Agile Manifesto, but that's not customized to anybody. So I don't want to change what the manifesto says, but there may be things that are a little more relevant in the manifesto to a specific organization than another. Same way with software craftsmanship or lean approaches. I want to figure out what means the most to my organization. There may be other things that also kind of go in there of principles. I do a lot in the public sector, so there's certain things that come into play because of the public sector and transparency that I want to consider also in that transformation because they actually marry up, right? So I want to think about all of these things that I'm bringing in. The other reason I like an aspiration as opposed to like a measure doesn't tell me, okay, that's where I want to be, but it doesn't tell me, it tells me conditions that I'm trying to meet, but it doesn't give anybody like any inspirational thing. It says, hey, I'm having a problem or I've got to make a decision. How do I correct and make sure I'm going the right way? All right, so I want something that helps teams, helps groups, helps management, everybody to figure out, oh, this is the right kind of decision to make. It's based on the principles we've all agreed to. So the end result is I don't wind up with this, hey, we're going Agile and here's how we're going to do it. I wind up with, we're going Agile and here's how we're all collectively moving in this direction. So there's lots and lots of approaches out there for creating one. Here's some of the techniques you can do. There's probably myriads of other ones out there. I think Steve also had another one that was really great about purposeful alignment, a model for doing that. That was also quite good. I think that would play well in there. But what I'd like to, we're trying to get a common agreement and understanding, but what I really like to stress is the greater way of doing this is getting some kind of participatory creation on this. And if that's not helping us, you know, or if that's not possible because maybe we're a really huge organization, at least let me get some clear communication and allow feedback in so I can actually take in how well is what I've thought through going to work for my organization. And that's certainly better than making a proclamation. This is the direction we're going to go, right? So again, making it participatory is better than communication with feedback, which is better than just proclaiming this is the direction we're going to go. All right. So here's an example of a simple vision, right? Deliver business value daily, constantly improve doing it, reducing waste, and through new ideas. Very, very simple, nice vision. I can make decisions. Hey, am I delivering business value daily with my decision? Great. Am I doing anything that improves it or reduces waste or gives me a new idea on how to do it? So it's very clear on the direction I want to go. Out of that, you can get cool characteristics that show up. And the heavier ones, this is actually from an exercise I did with an agency. The heavy, dark, larger ones were the most prominent characteristics. Again, this is sort of subjective in the way you put these onto the graph, but here's how we plotted them. And you can see that this, you know, where they wanted to go, this was a aspirational vision, so it kind of fell toward this way. It's a little more collaborative, but you know, we've got things we need to consider like cost stuff and things like that where there were government agencies, so we needed to worry a little bit. We need to be a little more toward control, but we can move more collaboratively. And likewise, you know, we're busy in the firefighting, but we'd like to start thinking a little more future forward so we could start seeing things like innovation and taking risks showing up down as another way of doing it. So you can see sort of where the organization wants to go as far as characteristics. So we've got a target aspiration. How do we determine what our